Welcome back to the show, and I hope you're having a great day. So, I wanted to talk about Andrew Yang's last several days. He had appeared on the Van Jones show on CNN. We got a little flack from Mr. Joe Rogan, which was a surprise to me. And is Andrew Yang experiencing his first uh, scandal, I guess you could say? So we're going to cover a little bit of that today. So, Andrew Yang on the Van Jones show. So, Van Jones does this show on CNN. I could pretty much tell since Andrew's been interviewed by Van Jones. I could tell Van Jones likes Andrew Yang. I could tell in his questioning, and the show was good. Van Jones wanted to compare or give consideration to the idea of Andrew Yang being this businessman president. What would be different from him and Donald Trump? And I like how Andrew Yang talked about how Trump gives entrepreneurs, the real entrepreneurs, a bad name, basically referring to Trump as this type of entertainer. Uh, I thought that was all great. I'm not sure exactly sure who Van Jones is really rooting for, though. I know he likes Andrew. He seems to have some type of relationship with Cory Booker, but I do think he's kind of looking at it in a way that he doesn't think Cory Booker's gonna really go much further than he's gone. But they kind of had a past relationship back when Van Jones was working at the White House, the show was pretty good, and of course, going back to Andrew Yang getting on television is never a bad thing. Just helps, ever so often to pick up his momentum. So let's deal with Mr. Joe Rogan now. Joe Rogan came as a shock that, well, really didn't kind of come as a shock, I guess, but I think how he was referring to Andrew Yang was a little bit disappointing to me because he kind of acted like he was like that Andrew Yang guy, and it was kind of weird because during the Joe Rogan podcast, I felt the conversation and the relationship between Joe Rogan and Andrew Yang. I was hoping or under the impression that it was a good relationship, right, or getting there. But I think the problem with Joe Rogan as well is we got to look at there are some obstacles politically, I think, between Joe Rogan and Andrew Yang, and some of which it has to do with, well, first of all, Joe Rogan is a hunter, right? We know that he hunts moose. Joe Rogan kind of has the image of the man's man, right? And he's got this cool podcast that everybody comes on. But, he's a hunter. He eats meat. He also, in my opinion, seems to share some very conservative ideas and relationships with people from Jordan Peterson to Ben Shapiro. Somebody like Jordan Peterson who talks about climate change, kind of being this manufactured thing, not being real, and as caused by humans, and kind of, refers to it in that sense. And, I just kind of wonder, does Joe Rogan, having these relationships with these conservative personalities, I wonder if it, somewhat, impacts his political views a lot. I also kind of think now that Joe Rogan would be the type of person who, if he hears a good policy, he would support that, and it would be have a more nonpartisan approach to it, right? But in this particular case, it didn't seem to rub Joe Rogan the right way. Of course, we're talking about when Andrew Yang talked about cutting back on eating meat, the problems with meat and climate change. And whereas I'm 100% with Andrew Yang, I'm fine with cutting back on meat altogether. If I could cut it out of my diet completely, I do it. It's probably more health problems to eating meat. Now, there are some needs and concerns to eat meat to a certain group of people. And um, I spent a lot of time off meat, and I do remember a period of feeling kind of weak, but it was an adjustment, and I kind of got back on track, and I was fine after that. But it could be that some people do require a certain amount of meat in their diet, and so Joe Rogan was kind of bent out of shape about that. He doesn't want Andrew Yang even going down that route, threatening the economy of the meat industry, the cattle industry, and all this. And so Joe Rogan just didn't like that. So he kind of wasn't very supportive of Yang on that point. And so I think that uh, Andrew Yang is making good points in reference to climate change and the effect and the cost to the environment, and we do need to consider all of that. And Andrew's not talking about legally forcing people to stop eating meat. Like California. I don't really see this any different than when they had days in California. They may still have them. If some of you all are out in California, maybe you can tell me if they do or not. But they had like one day of the week where you didn't eat any meat, right? And it wasn't forced, of course. It wasn't mandated, but it was a good idea not to eat meat on that day. And a lot of Californians didn't. I think that was under Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? But anyway, those type of proposals to help the environment, I don't think is that bad, right? An idea to the point where Joe Rogan should have got so bent out of shape about it. But I understand he wants to hunt, he wants to eat meat, and that a while back, I remember when Oprah Winfrey got sued by the cattle industry because she said she'd never eat another hamburger again. So it's a lot of money in beef and cattle and the meat industry, but it is a terrible industry. The treatment of cows is horrible. How they pack these animals together. If you ever watched any of these documentaries and programs, believe you me, you probably either cut back on meat or stop eating it altogether. You almost have to just not watch them. But Andrew was making that point about that. Joe Rogan didn't like it, so that's kind of where we're at with that. Want to get into what's going on with this scandal, right? So this lady's talking about, her name looks like Kimberly Watkins. She was a former employee of Manhattan Prep. That's his Andrew Yang's business there. And she talks about in this article about how Andrew Yang fired her because she got married, right? And so this is the beginning and the start of the scandals that are going to come Andrew Yang's way, or attempted scandals to try to do whatever they can to stop his momentum, as they see he's a real threat now. So she comes out with this story. Now, wasn't back there, don't really know all the details of what happened, but from Andrew Yang's perspective, and as I understand it, it was basically he felt she was the type of employee who was distracted from her work and basically wasn't going to be a fit for that job. And as we know, this happens in a lot of businesses, right? This happens in a lot of jobs where maybe outside interferences stop them. And again, we'd have to hear in detail what Andrew Yang has to say about it. This is her allegations, and this is, what she's saying about it. But, the basic idea is she got fired for getting married. And the idea was this distracted her away from her job responsibilities or made her less motivated. I remember watching a movie years ago with Kevin Bacon, the actor Kevin Bacon. And the movie was about how this boss would try to get everybody so connected and to the job where he knew they'd be around on the job. And he knew that certain distractions on the job or in their personal lives would keep them from losing the job or being too distracted. And I believe in Kevin Bacon's particular set of circumstances. He had just purchased a brand new Porsche. And the boss was saying something to the effect of, well, I know he's going to stick around and work hard because, he just purchased this brand new exotic car. He has to keep up the car payments and a variety of things like that. And he was concerned about this other employee. It may have been Jennifer Aniston playing the role. Some of you may have, and it was almost kind of similar to the feel of what these allegations this lady's making against Andrew Yang. It was something going on with her where the boss was concerned about if she was going to be able to perform her job, at the optimal level he wanted her. And so he was trying to get rid of the distractions and, and avoid that from happening. And, basically letting her know, if you're going to be on this job, you have to do this to stick around. So I don't really know if that was the direction, what was happening with Andrew Yang. So not going to get deep into that. But we can look forward to stuff like this happening as Andrew Yang advances. But I will say that if this is going to be the height of Andrew Yang scandals, I'd take them any day of the week because we've had a run of some of the worst scandals in presidential candidate history, and I would say this is certainly mild in comparison to what we've gotten, if they're even true, even if it's even like if it even happened like she says it happened, because of course in certain situations people basically always have their own version of a story to tell, right? And they see and interpret stories certain ways. So I don't know if Andrew definitively came out and just say, I'm firing you because you got married and you're going to be distracted and what have you. But I will say this, Andrew Yang is an attorney himself. Remember, he spent years as a lawyer, right? So I'm a little bit, skeptical of some of the details of this, because you got to be careful in the workplace when you just tell people things like, oh, well, because you got pregnant, we're going to fire you. You can't do this job. Or if you're married, you're fired. And, those, especially this didn't happen like, this was like 2007 or something. So, we're not talking like back in the 90s or the 80s or something. So, I'll leave a link in the description to the article. You kind of read it and make up your own mind. You know what I mean? Here is saying that Watkins went on to claim in her article that she didn't even realize at the time how unethical Yang's alleged reason for firing her was. But that's the next thing. He said Andrew must have calculated, well, she's saying must here. So must is an assumption. Must have calculated that I would work less, travel less, put in fewer hours as a married woman, yet still earn my six-figure bonuses. He had seen how seamlessly my stuff had performed while I was on my honeymoon. He probably thought that they would do the work cheaper, she wrote. So, I mean, it's almost like then she would be saying, they said something to the effect of, it wasn't like a discriminatory action. It's similar to her own words. More so than it was based on a business decision to make more money. He's, in other words, she's saying Andrew Yang has figured out he can make more money if she's not there with the staff he has, because they showed they were quite competent while she was gone. But even if that's the case, if it's in that direction, yeah, that would kind of more speak towards, hey, well, we're going to downsize, or there's more value in us doing it this way. We don't need all of these employees. It might be, seemingly, it'll be moving more in that direction. Probably not the coolest thing to do to your employees if that's true, but, I could see it being more of a business decision than this discriminatory decision. But she said must have. So again, he didn't tell her this. She's making an assumption. And because of that assumption, I would have to say, yeah, this is a weak scandal, not probably even going to rank as a scandal for the Andrew Yang campaign. But that's all I want to say in this video. If you all like content like this, you know what to do. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, take care.